Beyond the podcast of 1984. Beyond the podcast of 1984. Beyond the podcast of 1984.
Hey, it's for horses. Or something like that. Anyhow, hey, what's up? This is, This is, the Bizarre Alien from Outer Space. And welcome back to episode 5 of Beyond the Podcast of 1984. Moving right along, my last episode that I was upstairs in my house talking about my movie collection. I'm going to finish that probably in the next episode because I forgot to talk about some films. And, you know, like I said, if you don't find that exciting, hey, you don't have to listen to it. But I'm a nerd and I forgot to mention some beloved films because I have these different sections, you know, where I put my particular films that I really like. Anyhow, moving right along, I want to go back in time and talk about a dear friend of mine who disappeared in 1994. I speak of my dear friend Jerry S.C. Vivek, who actually I lived with down in California back in 1991. It's about 5 or 6 months. And very last time that I heard from him, you know, we were pen pals again. And in 1994, I wrote him a really super, super long letter. It was like 8 pages long. And I never heard back from him. And to this day, you know, it's been 20 years now. Almost exactly. In fact, it might even be exactly 20 years. Not exactly to this day. Anyhow, Jerry, you know, it sounds like I'm talking to him in a past tense because I have no clue if he's still alive. But he was one of my best friends, and I hope he's still out there. If anybody knows his last place that I know he lived, well, I lived out there too for a while, was in Temecula, California. Lived on Tamipa Road. That's near San Diego. It's about an hour and a half from L.A., you know, all California, obviously. Anyhow, so as my story here goes, I lived in Germany with my parents because my stepdad was in the Air Force, and that was in Hahn, Germany. And I had a bunch of problems, nothing like, you know, illegal problems, anything like horrible. But long story short, I ended up living with my grandparents in Blanchard, Idaho. And I had no friends. Of course, you know, I would count my grandpa and my grandma, rest in peace. Those guys, you know, my friends, obviously my grandparents, and I get a lot of love from them and a lot of just compassion and kindness, which I really needed in my life. But I had no friends. I mean, I knew a few people when I first moved to Idaho. Of course, I can't even remember what, I think it was, I should know. I should know exactly. It was the beginning of May of 1988, and I ended up going to school for 2 years, which I hated. Priest River, Lamana High School, Priest River, Idaho. Just, it was horrible. Not too many good stories. I'll probably talk about that crappy school in an episode. I think I've probably already mentioned it. I was talking about bullying, but yeah, that school, just the biggest assholes and bullies and pieces of crap that even nowadays when I think about these people like 33 years later, I freaking despise these people. No, more like 34 years now. Anyhow, moving. God, when was it? I think it was like about the middle of 1988. And my grandma, and of course, we're always going places on the weekends. Not the weekends, no. Normally we stayed home on the weekends. I would drive because she taught me how to drive her truck, her pickup truck. So I'd go into town usually on the weekends to get her mail. And once in a while we'd go together, you know, to go get some stuff down in Blanchard. And but during the week, we would go places. We'd go to the dump every few weeks, and that was before my grandpa ended up digging up this huge pit, and we ended up having a fire pit. So we just throw all the manure and all the crap, on the ranch in there. Well, anyhow, I think it was later '88. Is she ended up? I don't know how she met him, but this really nice family. It was like a guy, his brother-in-law, and his wife, and then their son Jerry, and then of course Jerry's girlfriend Tracy lived there too. And it was lived in this really nice cabin. And the cool thing is these folks were from Czechoslovakia, very very intelligent, cool people, very friendly, very kind. They actually built that everything they found in the dump, this huge dump. And they even had a wood burning stove, and it was really, really nicely built and everything. And then it was like a little, kind of like a little farm. They had some geese, and they ended up with a chicken that we gave them. We had I can't remember, it was a mink or something that killed all the chickens except for this poor little sweet hen survived. And my grandma ended up giving the hen to them, and they took care of her. And anyhow, so we went over there one day to say hi. I met Jerry, and he was kind of, cool. It was like this leather jacket, this big, thick black hair, and a little kind of, if he was here, he'd be like, dude, what the hell? Yeah, it was kind of a weak mustache. Really nice guy, real tall, lanky. And Tracy, she was, I always thought she was cute. She's a really nice gal, but they were always sitting in the back room in his room, and he had like a bum box, and they had all these metal tapes, and we ended up becoming friends. And I'd go over there. Sometimes my grandma would drive me over there and drop me off, or I'd go hang out with them in the back room, and she'd, hang out with his mom and his stepdad, which, sorry, I forgot to say it was his stepdad, and then his mother's brother, his uncle. And Jerry was pretty cool. He ended up lending me a bunch of cassettes like Testament, Anvil Bitch, Venom, and he really, I was already into hard rock and metal. Like I got into it around, Twisted Sister in '84, which people can say what they want, hard rock, heavy metal. Still love Twisted, man. SMF since 1984. Anyhow, so he lent me all this stuff, and then of course the one album I really liked was Celtic Frost, Into the Pandemonium, and he lent me what was it? Celtic Frost, I think Morbid Tales and Emperor's Return. And so he really helped me get even more into metal, and I think I like Death Angel, which I thought were kind of okay. I like that song Thrashers, but I never really got into Death Angel. And then like Nuclear Assault, which was cool. I think Overkill, just random, metal stuff. So anyhow, Jerry was a cool guy, man. Total metalhead from not San Francisco, sorry, San Diego. And he was a chain smoker too, so I don't know. He was a really thin guy. He drank Coca-Cola like water. And all I ever saw him eat were ramen, especially when we ended up becoming roommates when I lived down in California. When he moved back there, it was funny, man. Anyhow, we'd hang out sometimes. We'd get a ride in the town. And I remember one particular incident. It's funny because we became really good friends. Oh, yeah, and we went to the same school. And he would stick up for me, and he'd wear these big spiked gauntlets. And I remember one day this jock was just starting stuff with me. The typical, you're very good, that kind of crap. And anyhow, the last bell rang. We were walking down a hall, and I pointed the guy out. I was like, yeah, that guy right there, because he asked me what was going on because I was upset. And he walked right up behind the guy and just yelled really loud. Uh, and he punched him full force in the back, and it was freaking hilarious. But the guy just like dropped. And he's like, if you ever, F with my friend again, I'll freaking kill you. And it was funny. And the guy never did mess with me again because Jerry was just like, he could go crazy if he wanted. But he was a really, other than that, he was a nice guy. He was hilarious. I remember one time we were going to this record store. It was pretty much a hole in a wall. It was in Newport, Washington, which wasn't very far. Well, it was miles away, but it was like going down the long main highway, and it was like an invisible, you got the invisible line for the border between Idaho, because I lived in Idaho, and then you had Washington right there. But the guy's name was Rusty, and it was in Newport, Washington, and he was a really nice guy. He never really had a lot of stuff in there that I was into, but he was a really nice guy, and I tried to support him. Well, we went in there one day, and he goes, "Hey guys, I found something that you might be interested in." And he pulls out this Hellhammer Apocalyptic Raids 12-inch on metal blade, and I was like, "Oh wow." Uh, and what was amazing about that is I could have sworn Jerry was just going to get it. He was going to take it because he only had one there, and I'm like, "Oh, he's going to take it." And Jerry was like, "Dude, you go ahead and have it." And I had some money from my allowance, and I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah," because I mean, Jerry already had like a bunch of metal stuff. I didn't have a lot of tapes. I had a few, but I was like, it would have been fair. But it was like this LP, and anyhow, so I got it, and I still have it, and that was like '88. I still have that LP, and it's the original pressing, which is cool because I love Hellhammer. Love Celtic Frost. Just a big fan of Tom Warrior. So that was really awesome. Um, but yeah, we'd hang out and stuff. We got along really well. And then he ended up going back to California. And then unfortunately, him and Tracy broke up. I don't know the whole story if she cheated on him, but he was telling me some stuff later on. And well, I ended up having some problems. I don't know. I was just really lonely, and and I always loved my grandparents, but I really didn't have any friends. I knew a few acquaintances. I had one friend I got along with, a really cool guy named James. I called him not Hames, not Dames, not Rames, but James, and he was a really funny, freaking hilarious. It was definitely a flamboyant guy, a really funny, nice, totally sweet dude, really cool. And there was a few people in that school that were cool. Like I knew a guy named Lucian, and he was like the only person I knew in that school that was in a rap. And he was, of course, he was a white guy. He didn't really have. I knew like of one black guy the whole time I lived in Idaho for the 4 years that I was there. That time, and then like one Mexican family, pretty much it. Anyhow, Jerry ended up going back to California to live with his dad and a stepmom. And I ended up, I was in Texas for a little while. My grandparents ended up talking to my parents. They said, "Yeah, you could come back." And I'll tell that whole story, but I don't have a limited amount of time. So I'll have to tell my Texas story, but another story for the show. But I ended up, months later, Jerry's like, "Hey man," cause I didn't know what I was going to do when I was in Texas. And he's like, "Dude, you can come down here." So I ended up, I got a Greyhound ticket, and I think my parents were probably glad to get me out of there. But it was like I think it was like early summer of '91, and I ended up going down to San Diego. He picked me up and he pointed at me, and it was so funny because there he was wearing his old leather jacket again, smoking a cigarette, hair blown in the wind, and he pointed at me and started laughing. And I don't know, it was probably because I had a mullet or the beginnings of a mullet. I ended up having a serious mullet a couple months later. Anyhow, he picks me up and he's laughing. I'm wearing my camouflage jacket that I had for like many years that my uncle got me, in my combat boots and some probably ripped up shirt as usual. I was just some dirty punk rock looking guy with, trying to grow his hair long. And so he picks me up in his dad's truck, and we go back there, and I met his dad. His dad was cool. And his dad still had this like really deep accent, broken English, big Czechoslovakian guy. I met his stepmom. She was pretty nice. And then I met his little brother, it's like his half brother, Richie, which actually I remember his name. Wow. Just talking about it, I remembered. And then his nephew, or no, his cousin. Yeah, I think it was his cousin that lived with him. And while I was there, we became really, really good friends. We ended up, his parents had this really big house that his dad had built because his dad was a construction guy. I think he was the head of like a crew. And I remember Jerry telling me that that's how he made a bunch of money, buying all the tapes and records. Because back then, this is right before CDs. I think CDs might have started been coming out, but they're really expensive at the time. This was 91. Well, anyways, we lived in a trailer, probably about 20 feet from the house. I had a dog named Buddy, and then this little female dog. I can't remember her name, but we lived in this trailer with no power. And it was pretty funny because he had a boombox in the living room. Of course, he had his big ass collection of cassettes. And he'd sit in the living room, and it was so freaking hilarious because he'd be playing all this death metal stuff. And I remember one day he was playing, God, who was it? I know he was listening to, God, who was it? It wasn't Entombed. I think it was like Carnage or something, one of those bands. And I said, "Oh, is that Cadaver?" And he goes, "Oh no, it's Carnage." Or it was something like that. Anyways, it was like the same exact guitar tone, and he kind of laughed. I was just like, God. And that was like one of the reasons why I never got into a lot of death metals. He got, as the story goes back, I'm sorry, I need to jump back just a little bit, is when I lived in 1988, I did a fanzine. I did this fanzine, God, it was, God, man. Okay, I feel like a fruitcake now. Oh, no, okay, so I did a zine. The first zine I did, it was called Nightmarish Tales. And I interviewed a few bands. It was really, really sloppy. I took a picture of Metallica, and I cut out pictures of Halloween masks, and I glued them, used like, I don't know, stick glue or whatever. Anyways, I put out a zine. It was one-sided. It's probably about 20 pages. Librarian got kind of ticked off because, I was paying for all my copies in a library. She goes, you're using too much paper. I was like, well, I'm paying for it. And I told my grandma, she's like, what an idiot. So we ended up going to this coffee shop in Newport, and I ended up doing another zine. I think it was the pre.
You're still afraid?
Stop it now! I mean it!
He's coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant!
He's coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're acting like a
He's
child!
coming for you. Look, here he comes.
Now he'll hear you!
Here he comes now. I'm getting out of here, BCA. Tune in to BCA's Podcast Weekly on Beyond the Podcast of 1984. BTP 1984.com. Beyond the Podcast of 1984.
Beyond the Podcast of 1984.
So I came up with the name, and I did the zine, and it was like, I don't know, 10 pages. It was super, super sloppy. It was called Real Sickness. And this, oh man, I'm getting the years mixed up. Okay, this would have been my last year in high school before I dropped out. So this might have been right after I was out of school. 1990. I was pen pals with Will Romer, and he ended up, I can't remember. I wrote him. I just said, hey, I was curious about your demo because this is like demo number 190, which I still have that. Man. And it's awesome. It's the 3-song demo. And then he put a live show right after it, the same exact 3 songs. And it's pretty cool. But anyways, we were pen pals, and he said, hey, I'll trade you a demo for your zine. And I did. And unfortunately, I only made a few copies. And I wish Will would respond to my friend request. I don't know if it's still on there, but it was like the beginning of this year, 2024. I sent a friend request, and I even sent him a message saying, hey, man, this is Charles Bizarre Alien. And we were pen pals for a long time. Well, not a long time, but we were pen pals way back, and then we were friends on Facebook. I don't know if he's busy or just like doesn't care, doesn't look at his messages. Anyhow, I would love to find out, and I don't even know if Will's ever even going to listen to my show. I doubt it, but if anybody knows Will, I wonder if he still has that zine, because I would love to get my hands on a copy I don't care, just a photocopy of it. Anyhow, he was really cool. I sent him the zine, and it was just really sloppy. It was all just stories about bands. Well, later down the road, Jerry more or less took the name and everything, And I did a bunch of interviews. He did a bunch of interviews. And I had done an interview with the Great Cat. And it was funny because I was in her fan club, the Cat Slave Club, and I still have some autograph pictures of her. And I thought she was totally hot. I had an obsession with her. And I know that's for like a whole nother episode, man. That's a whole nother freaking episode right there. Just talk about the Great Cat, because I could tell you some freaking stories, and I guarantee you people will be laughing like, oh, geez. I still think she's hot. But anyways, I have like one album by her. I don't know which one it is. Beethoven on Speed, I think. Anyhow, I had done an interview with her in Nightmares Tales over the phone, and it was really funny because I had to write down stuff on a piece of paper real fast. I made up a bunch of questions, but she thought my grandma was my secretary and that I was the editor of some magazine. And because my grandma told me one day we were out cleaning a barn, and she said, oh, some lady called Cat called. And I'm like, what? And all of a sudden I put two and two together. I'm like, whoa. And I interviewed her, and she was kind of really loud and obnoxious. Well, anyways, we took that interview. That was one of the interviews that was in the very first issue of Real Sickness. And to this day, it still kind of ticks me off. He took the interview and he retyped it, and he kept interrupting. It was like, you're not talented, you're stupid, your band should quit, they're really good, but your bass player and your drummer should join my band. And I was like, Jesus, but it was a really sloppy zine. It barely had any art. There was like, we did a lot of movie reviews, and they were really bad. I mean, this is back in like 90, man. Jerry interviewed a bunch of bands like Eidetic. God, what's the other band? It's been a while. I have one issue because when he put it together, he brought it to a place. He had a photocopy. It has a glossy cover, but it was really, really generic looking. There was, everything could have been shrunk down more. It was just really sloppy. There was a bunch of typos, but it's still cool, man. And I'm not ragging, man. If I ever get hold of you again, or if you ever hear this or whatever, it's not a rag on you. And this was like so long ago, and it was still really fun to do. And I interviewed Sockeye and Nuclear Death. I believe he interviewed Outpatients. It wasn't me. I got him into them, and he really liked them. And Scott Helen is a really cool guy. He's still around, and I need to get hold of him. He does world music now with his wife, which I think is cool. But he was one of my earliest pen pals. I love the dude. Just a really kick-ass dude. So anyways, it was chock full of interviews, had a lot of reviews, a lot of horror movie reviews, and it was just, it was pretty cheesy, but it was funny because I interviewed Nuclear Death, and all it says at the beginning of the interview, it says nuclear. It's like the logo nuclear, but it doesn't even say death. And I'm like, what the? So I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, it came out, and then I got a little bummed because he kind of took over. I'm like, well, whatever. That ended up becoming Jerry's passion. And when the Earwigs recorded the really short and unofficial August 90 rehearsal tape, he took that and My Fake Life Dismembered. He has to be too. Like, I dubbed it for him, and he had a little distro going on, and I thought it was pretty cool. But I had to laugh because he was selling copies, or trying to sell copies of my tape, and he even reviewed it and said, "Yeah, this is BC and his friend Wayne. It's just like guitar and drums, but they're gonna add a bass player." And it was really funny because that never happened. I've never had a bassist in the Earwigs. Anyhow, I ended up, what was it? Was it before? Oh my God. See, I'm sorry. I'm getting this. It's been a long time, man. I think, okay, so before I went to California, I was in Idaho, and or was it? Oh my God. Anyways, I got a really big kick-ass package from Jerry one day, and he had sent me like 8 90-minute cassettes, and they were just full of demos and stuff. Like, he recorded me the first Minch 7-inch, the one-sided 7-inch. What was it? Impetigo's All We Need Is Cheese live demo. and Namland demo, Eye Gouger demo. God, I'm trying to remember all these other bands, but a whole ton of stuff. And then he sent me, can't remember if it was the same package, but Napalm Death from Enslavement to Obliteration, original cassette from England, which is really cool. I still have that too. I really cherish that. That's a classic. I have it on CD too, but I'm like, I'm not getting rid of my old tape. He sent me all this stuff, and it was just really cool, and it was awesome. And he would just send me lots of flyers, and this was back in the earlier days. Flyers, I mean, we didn't have internet. We didn't have computers, any of that crap. I mean, computers were around, but I didn't have a computer. I didn't even ever imagine that I'd own one. I had a cheap GPX stereo, a dual cassette deck, turntable, and a radio, and that was like my stereo. But no, Jerry sent me all this stuff, and then like later down the road, I think I already mentioned that. That's going to be in my GG thing, but he dubbed me later on a GG Allen Hated in the Nation, which was like a big, great thing to happen in my life. That was a big turning point for me for getting into even cooler music. And so anyways, he turned me on to a lot of music, and I mean, it was a lot of stuff. Funny thing is, I still have some cassettes from way, way, way back. They're really bad quality. They were all like, a lot of these tapes, the stuff was recorded on really cheap blank tapes. Like, not master sound crap. That was like the worst. But just really low quality, like 3 for $1 blank tape garbage. Like, just really bad, cheapo crap. Well, so anyhow, I when I lived in California, I was starting to go to a lot of shows, and I saw a lot of bands. I saw like Fear Factory when they had their 3-song demo out, and I wish I would have gotten one because Jerry was distributing that. And then he was also carrying copies of the LA Death Comp, which I still have. I still have that cassette. I'd like to get it on CD. Had a lot of great LA death metal bands, and I remember one time we were hanging out, and who was that gore grind band, Total Carcass? Fudge, I can't remember the name. We went and saw like Excruciating Terror, who were just freaking awesome. So Sadistic Intent after their singer quit. So they're like, hey guys, you want us to still play? Their singer, I think, had quit like that week or something. He just quit the band. And we're like, yeah, please do. And they were really nice guys. It was all instrumental. They were kick-ass. Went to a big show. There was a tour going. It was like Sacrifice, Believer, Bolt Thrower, Mind Rot, Morgion, and Majesty. And then that was somewhere in L.A. And then we also, when we saw Fear Factory, I hung out with Dino, and he was totally cool and hilarious. Because I asked him about his old Pervert Mentors type band. They were called the Douche Lords. And he started laughing. And I was like, yeah, I read about you guys in some metal magazine. And I remember at that show, I was wearing a bandana. Jerry lent me this other leather jacket. I was trying to look like G.G. Allen. I had a chain around my neck. I looked like a freaking idiot. And Jerry was just like laughing. But some really cool shows. And I remember we were going down the road one day. We were going back to, where we lived. Long ride. It's like a 2-hour ride home. And we actually drove by Metal Blade's office. And I was like, oh, man, if I would have had a camera back then, but I didn't. But it was this really cool, legendary Metal Blade Records. We went to a lot of shows. Spanky's downtown. I think it was downtown L.A. We went and we saw Death Shit, which I'm still trying to find my demo. I have it somewhere, and I remember dubbing that for a few friends, and Mike Duncan really liked it. I love Death Shit. I have the tape with the cover. I know the tape somewhere around. It's a black tape, has like a little sticker on it. They didn't even write Death Shit on the tape, but there is total grind noise, grindcore band with John W. Lee. We actually got in touch years ago on MySpace, and then he just freaking disappeared. I don't know. He was a nice guy, but he's like, yeah, dude, I put out a Minch tape. And Minch never put out a tape. And I remember talking to Jim from Jim Lasagna, Jim Kanya. And he was like, dude, we never put a tape out. And I told him about that, and he laughed. He said, well, that's cool that somebody likes us enough to do that. But I don't know. John was a a nice guy. He did a label for a while. I think it's been all his gore grind stuff, but I lost touch with him. And it just seemed like he's always like, yeah, I'm doing this. And he didn't, he never sent me shit, I mean, I had the Death Sit demo. I can't remember if he gave it to me or I bought it from him, but I'm hoping I can find it. But anyhow, so we went to the show at Spanky's, and we waited outside in a line for about half an hour. Met a lot of cool people, a lot of people from all over the world. I mean, you want to see like diversity, Los Angeles, California, man. Meet people from like Brazil and Colombia. And I had this one guy, he's like, hey, yes, I do one-man grindcore industrial band. And I wrote this dude. He gave me a flyer for his demo, and he never wrote me back. And I had a few people doing that. I remember when I lived down there, I wrote to so many bands when I lived there because Jerry was always getting stuff in the mail. Because he was continuing real sick in the zine, so he was getting tons of promos, 7 inches, records, you name it. People were sending him in tons of zines. It was really cool. I mean, it was like Christmas for him every day. So I was like, cool. I'd like, we'd go pick up the mail right down the road, and I'd get letters too, because I had pen pals and stuff, and I was doing some tape trades and stuff. But Jerry just, oh man, he got so much stuff in the mail, and it was really, really cool. And he got some really cool stuff. That's how I got in a pile of eggs and Deshi Charge, because he got like the very first demos, and pretty cool, man. But yeah, Jerry, he was an interesting guy, but sometimes he'd get really pissed off over some really dumb things. And I'll get to like some of the fun stuff again in a moment. But I remember one time he had like all the Screwdriver albums on cassette. I'm just thinking, oh God, because I used to have G.G. Allen. What was it? Eat My Fuck. And then on side 2 was Screwdriver's White Power album. And I listened to it, and it didn't turn me into a racist. Some people, if you listen to it, you must be a Nazi. I'm like, no, I just had it. I thought it was a funny album. I did like it at the time. It was a very blatantly racist, neo-Nazi garbage. Anyhow, because of a story that I heard about something that happened to one of my family members, I went in and one day and I destroyed the tape. I could have recorded over the Screwdriver side, but I ended up smashing the whole tape. I was just really upset. Anyhow, but Jerry, he would go off once in a while. He's like, oh yeah, it's the Jews' fault. My country was invaded. I'm like, what are you talking about? And, he was always trying to have an excuse why he could listen to this like neo-Nazi crap. And I was like the only crap he had in his collection. But, he was my friend, and I just like, whatever. He didn't listen to him a lot, but I remember one time, though, something he was listening to I really did like that was cool. Is I was in my room, kind of half asleep, zoned out, just taking a nap. I wasn't feeling that great, just kind of depressed. And he was cranking up Bad Brains, and it was the song Pay to Come, and I just remember that memory, and it was a really kind of cool experience. I was zoned out, laying on my bed, not sure what I was going to do with my life. And it was kind of getting later towards the time where I didn't know I was going to do it. It's like, we were trying to get jobs. We had a part-time job one day, work around eucalyptus plants. I couldn't handle it. The smell of them made me feel really sick. So the next day I just sat in his dad's truck and read a book about serial killers for 8 hours. And I didn't get paid, but, I remember hearing that he had it cranked up in the living room. It was pretty cool. And he'd play some cool stuff once in a while. And, it's some good memories of Jerry. And that's where, 91, I ended up buying this. I wish I could remember. It's not I keep calling it a Casio. It's not a Casio keyboard. It's this cool little keyboard I got. I still have it. It had drum pads on it. That's one of the main reasons I bought it. But I ended up recording the Earwigs Holocaust. And then a couple weeks later, Jerry was telling me about this band idea he had, this like total crazy band called Masturbators Anonymous. And he told people that was a group he was in, and people would laugh. And I said, hey, let's record it. Let's do a band called Masturbators Anonymous. And we did. And I was playing my guitar, of course, no distortion pedal because I didn't have one, just my amp, small amp. And then Jerry was banging on a cardboard box, and we were totally ripping off Minge, but we were both huge fans. I still am. I still love Minge, but just screaming, really inappropriate stuff, really bad stuff, and I actually have that on a CD, and I also have some extra crap on we did. I just wish to get off my ass. I found a copy of the cover again, thank goodness. It was this really foul noisecore, grind noise garbage. Thanks to my friend Zach putting the old cassette that we did. But we did that, and I am going to put it out, and I'm dedicating it to Jerry because I want to put a little story in there saying, that was his band name. Well, it wasn't even really a band name. It was just a joke he made, Masturbators Anonymous, and we ended up making a band out of it, and it was really fun and just ridiculous. So we did that, and he kept talking about for years this band he was going to do. He's like, yeah, I got this death metal band, and he's always talking about, like, Las Vegas Pride and all the bands. He was really into, which he got me into them, and I wish I had their albums, but Righteous Pigs, he was really into them, and Goat Lord. What was it? Doomsnake Cult was another band, but he had a lot of pride for Las Vegas for some reason. He lived there for years, I guess. But anytime anything would pop up about Las Vegas, he's all, and he used to do that too. Like, people would, like, tick him off, and he'd do the metal sign with his hand, and he'd go, and it was freaking hilarious. But he kept talking about this band he wanted to do, and I wish he would have done it. It was a band called Grim Evil. And he had the whole concept. He would draw me logos in his letters. He would write me these satanic poems. And his nickname, SC, Satan's Child, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I never mocked him for it or anything. That was just, what he believed in. And, I don't know, man. He was a good guy. And we watched a lot of, like, horror and splatter films because he was doing video trades with Mark Murray. And Mark, I hope you're doing good. Just quit talking to Mark years ago. There's some dumb stuff going on, but I'm glad he's still around. But Mark was really heavily, besides he did one issue of Brainwash, which I still really love that zine. I thought it was really cool. Still got it. Got a comic he printed. I did years ago. He put it in there. So always thanks for that, buddy. Anyways, Mark was really into tape trading. Like, you name it, horror, splatter, porn. It was funny because he was looking for snuff films. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, nope. And I remember Jerry saying, yeah, Mark offered to take me some snuff films. And he's like, no, dude, I can't watch that. And Jerry was in all kinds of nasty horror films and total death metal. And, he surprised me because sometimes he'd go on a trip for like 2 weeks straight listening to either The Doors or Devo. But other than that, it was all death. And, of course, like earlier black metal. Like, he was really into Venom and Celtic Frost and a lot of, speed metal and thrash and all that stuff, But we watched a lot of cool stuff. They were all bootlegs back then, but like, what was it? Street Trash. This really cool low budget movie I'd love to find called Shock, Shock, Shock. And that was a fun one, very low budget. Kind of reminded me a tiny bit of John Waters meets, I don't know, somebody. But we watched uncut director's cut. It's funny because I had a timer on the bottom of the screen, but you ended up getting a bootleg. To this day, it's just almost my favorite shot on video horror of all time, but Redneck Zombies. We watched a lot of cool stuff. We watched, of course, Argento. What was it? They called it back then, the stupid bootleg. It was Deep Red, the Hatchet Murders. And it's funny, it's like, what? The hatchet? What are you talking about? They don't all get killed with a hatchet. So that's just typical, I think we watched Phenomena. Well, no, we didn't. That was when I was in Germany before that. Anyways, so we'd hang out a lot. And then every night, got into the habit, we'd watch Married with Children because I figured out when it was on. So we'd go upstairs, we'd go in the house, get hold of Richie and his cousin, and we would watch Married with Children every night. And I just love that show. I'd already been into it for probably about 2 years. I think I got into Married with Children in 89. But, we'd hang out. We'd go upstairs. And, the house was huge, but we'd go upstairs because it had this kind of, like, rec room. It was a really cool big room. And that's where Jerry and I'd hang out, watch, like, movies and stuff. And unfortunately, towards the very end, I don't know, I was just getting stressed out. We tried to get jobs and stuff, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, and I ended up freaking out one day. I thought, okay, I need a ride to the recruiter station. I was going to try to join the Army, and of course, they wouldn't let me in because I did not graduate. I didn't even have my GED at the time. I didn't get that till like 93, 94. I think it was 90. Yeah, I got it in 93. But, oh yeah, before I get to the very end of this, one of our favorite things too, one of the movies we were really into too is we used to go to this, some video store, and I remember renting it like twice, but Surf Nazis Must Die. I was really into that movie, and we'd go to this record store, and I think it was called Red Records, but guy there, cool kind of hippie rocker guy, and he'd give us promo cassettes like singles, and I remember I bought my Voivod War and Pain LP, which I still have. I have that at home in a plastic sleeve, and God, it's a great album. But we'd go there a lot, and then the guy turned them on to Ministry, and he got Ministry, a couple of their cassettes, and I remember one time we were hanging out. Oh, no, we weren't hanging out. We ended up, so he got a job, and it was at this automotive disassemblement factory, and he was there for about 2 weeks, and of course I was at home, and I just sit there all day. I don't remember what I was doing. I was trying to find stuff to do. But one morning he wouldn't get up, and I went in there like, Jerry, are you okay? And it turned out he had his heater under his blanket. And I was like, what the hell? And I had to go get his dad because I couldn't get him up. His dad went in there and just went off. He's like, you stupid son of a bitch. You're trying to kill yourself. What are you doing? And Jerry got up, and of course he got fired because he didn't show up. He was really sick that day. He was all dehydrated. I ended up getting a job there, and I had to drive this truck that his dad had gotten for one of his brother. And his brother wrecked it on purpose. It was a really expensive big truck, and he wrecked it. So I didn't have a license at the time, but I would drive it to the factory, get there at like 7 in the morning, and the first thing I do is go to the bathroom, and you could hear like about 20 people taking dumps at the same time. It was freaking hilarious, but I would be sitting on the toilet trying not to laugh because you hear all this diarrhea and splashing, and people, and I ended up making a friend there named Mike, and we called him Mike Ghost because he was really pale and pasty. Really nice guy. We ended up hanging out with him off and on. And he was a really nice guy. He worked there. I'd hang out with him during the breaks, and we'd talk about music. And he was a really nice guy, really funny guy. I hope wherever he is, he's doing okay. He's a cool dude. Then we ended up making a couple other friends that I met. These two hippie guys, Terry and God, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they're these real nice hippie guys, and they were like one day we were hanging out. We are gonna go to a show. And one of the guys, he offered us Coke, and I said, no thanks. And Jerry's like, nope, which I was surprised because considering later on he got really into drugs and stuff. But I can't remember the other guy's name, but I remember one time we were heading to L.A. to go to a show, and the guy started calling me a fag and all that. And Jerry's like, dude, you ever call him that again, I'll break your face. And the guy chilled out. I don't know what he was doing, but he was just messing with me. I was trying to do a Gigi Allen thing. I was trying to be like Gigi. So I was like, ask people, you dare me to drink my pee? And like, oh yeah, and I did. And it didn't really gross me out. But they dared me. So I did. I turned around, I peed in a bottle, I drank some of it. Like, dude, you're the sickest, you're a god, and going on and on and on. But then the guy made a joke later on, like, yo, why don't you drink my piss? And basically calling me, he's like, you're a Ferg and all that. And Jerry about punched him in the face. But that was the only time we had an incident with that guy. I can't remember, it was Terry, and God, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they mostly were really cool guys. They worked at that factory, and they were cool dudes. I ended up losing my job there, and they were going to let me go. I guess I just wasn't doing a good enough job. I said, or you just let me go and let other people get my job. And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, I don't know why I was so naive and stupid. And I actually tried to get unemployment. We both did. We couldn't get that. I ended up getting a job through some temporary agency for like 4 hours. I can't remember. I was like cutting down boxes or something. I was like, oh, I could keep doing this because it was really simple. But It was just weird, man. It was like so long ago. Well, when we used to borrow his dad's big ass truck, it was like a dually, had the dual gas tanks. And we'd go to the strip mall, and we had a habit of playing like early Napalm Death or First Carcass album, Sockeye, Anal Cunt. We'd crank it up really loud, like Minch. And I think we were cranking up Minor Threat too, but we'd drive through there just cranking up all this stuff really loud. And it was funny because there wasn't a whole lot to do around there. And I can't remember where we'd rent, because we rent movies very rarely. It might have been at the record store. They might have had movies, but I remember just being obsessed. I still love that movie. But Surf Nazis Must Die, which is like, gotta love that movie. That's like my favorite trauma film, along with Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High. I don't know why. That movie's been on my brain lately, so I'm probably going to watch it again this weekend because it's been years since I watched that. I love that damn movie, and I want to get it on Blu-ray really bad. So I have the old DVD. Anyhow, so yeah, we were really good friends, but then like towards the very end, I remember we were upstairs one day, and his cousin said something, and he really ticked me off, and I told him he was a little punk, and should shut his face, and Drew goes, "What?" And he got his fist up in there. He's like, "Yeah, you want to talk like that? I'll kick your ass." And I was like, and I got really pissed off. I'm like, well, he's being a prick. And Jerry was just really ticked off. And I ended up just leaving the house and went to the trailer, the non-powered trailer. And our friendship kind of went down a toilet. But right before that, oh, no, it wouldn't have been before or after, but I was going to try to join the army, and he was going to give me a ride. Well, I was sitting in my room, and I freaked out, and I destroyed a ton of stuff. I had, like a life-size poster of Elvira, which I've never been in. I found it once online. It was like $300. Like, oh, God. But I had a whole zine's worth of stuff. Like, I had an interview with Impetigo and Gigi Allen. And I can't remember who the other bands were, but I had a whole zine's worth of stuff. I ripped it all to shreds. I ripped up like almost everything I owned because I thought, I'm going to join the military. My life's, going to go down the toilet. Well, we ended up not, because I realized they wouldn't have let me in. And to this day, I still regret that I did that. I mean, I still have all my letters from Gigi. I have stuff he sent me. Thankfully, I didn't destroy anything else. It was just the interview. But we had a falling out, and it was just things, it just ended up, my grandparents were like, you can come back. And I worked on my attitude because, I was kind of an asshole. It's like, I'd get all upset because, I didn't get any mail or whatever. And my grandparents were really, really kind to me. And the thing is, I don't know, man. I was like pretty young. It was like, yeah, I ended up going back in the winter right before 92. And that was, of course, in 92, May of 92 is when I would have ended up moving to Spokane. My uncle set me up out here. But anyways, Jerry and I, that was 91. I ended up going back. And we were pen pals, and we talked on the phone a lot. And we get along just well. Our friendship was like it never, went. But he started getting really into drugs, and then for a while there, he said he was straight edge, and it seemed like he couldn't make up his mind. And he ended up doing another issue of Real Sickness, which was pretty cool, but it was also pretty funny. It was more like blatantly trying to be satanic, and he had a big list of like ripoffs, which I agree with him on that section, but a lot of ripoffs in there. A lot of reviews, like not a whole lot of punk stuff. Because the whole goal for me, my idea was that Real Sickness, we'd review all, regardless of the genre. If it's an underground band, we like their music, but he was trying to push it more in a black metal, death metal thing, and that's fine, just it ended up, it was his zine. I mean, he did pay a lot of money to get those issues out, and I'd love to find out, see how many issues he did. I'd love to get my hands on the other issues, but I'm really happy that I was, part of that. And I know I miss Jerry a lot. I've looked for him. I've gotten online, asking if anybody knows Jerry SCV Check. And, barely any responses at all. Like my friend Diablo's like, yeah, dude, I haven't heard from him in years. And then Steve A's just like, nice pants. And I'm like, what the hell? And I got kind of ticked off there a little bit, but I was like, whatever, he's just joking. But he probably does. I don't think he even remembered him because he sent him like one demo. I don't know if Jerry and him were pen pals after that. But anyhow, I've tried to find him once in a great while, get online. I look up some other people. I'm trying to find him. I don't know if he's alive at all, but he was a really good friend, and I loved him like a brother. And he got me into a lot of cool music, man. A lot of bands that I still dig to this day. I mean, every time if I see a Testament video on Metal Mayhem at work, I'll watch it. I'm like, cool, man, Testament's cool. But, yeah, I missed the guy, man. And he was a cool guy. And, I worried about him because he just kind of like a chameleon a little bit. I mean, he's always like a metalhead dude, but, once in a while he'd like, oh yeah, I'm only like in a hardcore punk. And he'd send me these just weird poems. And one of these days I want to put them together, print them up, put them out. But I still have letters from him and some flyers. But Jerry was a cool guy. And his family's pretty nice. Little brother's cool because he was a good kid too. I don't know what else to say. But he was a cool dude, and I know he believed in me as a friend because, he thought the earwigs were cool, and he was really trying to get my name out there by, selling my tape. He's like, yeah, dude, 2 demos on 1 tape, $3. And he did a distro. He'd like a lot of local California bands, and he was a rebellious dude. He wouldn't take shit from people, and I respect him for that because usually it was people that would just start stuff with him. I don't know. They don't like him. He was always like a metalhead, but he was definitely the epitome of a metalhead. But, like I was saying, once in a while, I'd get into a big trip. Like, I remember nonstop, like 2 or 3 weeks straight of ministry, which got me into ministry. That's when I got into him pretty much. Land of Rape and Honey and Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. I love those 2 albums. I have them at home, and I have some other ministry too. But, oh, shoot. All right, well, that's the end of this episode, and if I could think of anything else, I will mention it. But if anybody knows the whereabouts of Jerry SCV Check, I would really love to find out because I miss you, dude, and I love you, brother, and if you're gone from this world, I hope you went to a better place. But if you're still here, I really hope to get back in touch with you. It's been a long time. One thing that Jerry used to do, and I have to tell you this, anybody that hung out with him back then, I mean, this is a long time ago, man. I don't know. He had friends, but just people that really hung out with him, of course I did. Roommates with the guy for 5 months. Anyhow, he could be a really funny guy, very funny guy. And yeah, it's actually very comfortable being around with him. He could be a little tense sometimes, like if he's talking about, getting into fights or whatever, beating the shit out of somebody. He'd tell people off sometimes. It was actually pretty funny. But he was a character. But the thing that he used to do, and I need to because it's something that I say too. If somebody said something, like let's say they were wrong about something or they were just dumb or whatever, like his girlfriend one time would said something. He's like, instead of saying like duh or something, he'd look over and he'd say jugs. But the way he did it, he'd tilt his head side to side, and like I mentioned, he had this big, really thick black hair. That dude would never go bald. But he tilt his head like, and it was freaking hilarious because I remember he'd just do that. He would jugs, and he never drank when I hung out with him. And back then, I didn't even drink at all. I didn't even drink freaking coffee, man. It was like water. It's totally boring. Tea once in a very, very while. But anyways, I had to mention that because it was great. And I mean, if you saw it, it was great. And keep thinking about wanting to do like a parody, like a horror trailer or something like, you don't see them until they're upon you. Dun, 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 dun. Did you hear something? No? Huh? What? The hell was that? And then all of a sudden, out of the shadows. Jugs, oh my God, we're surrounded. They're eating us alive. Jugs. All right, so that has been a very special episode of Beyond the Podcast in 1984 about my friend Jerry, Satan's child Vivek, of the alleged band Grim Evil and Masturbators Anonymous and Real Sickness Fanzine. I do plea, if anybody knows of Jerry's whereabouts, if they know if he's still alive, please, please, please let me know. I miss you very much, dude. It would mean so much if you're still alive, especially if you heard my episode, because I love you, brother. I miss you. And thanks for always sticking up for me, man. It means a lot to me. And thanks for getting me into so many freaking awesome bands. And some bands I didn't really get into too much, but most of them, still dig them, man. So anyways, everybody out there, if you get good friends, just try to keep in touch with them, you know? Tell them you love them. If you think there's something wrong with that, then wow. Whatever. I love all my friends, and I tell them. And that's just too bad, isn't it? Oh, that's kind of gay. Well, I guess I'm kind of gay then, so whatever. Anyways, this has been the bizarre alien from outer space saying, well, I already said it. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll see you or hear you or you hear us next time on Beyond the Podcast of 1984. And before I forget, you can follow us on Facebook. It's BTPO1984. And also you can leave comments on the website at btpo1984.buzzsprout.com. So leave your comments, good or bad, praises, hate, whatever, I don't know. But if you have any questions, suggestions, if you've made crazy, weird movies, please send them to me. We'll be talking about lots of stuff upcoming. Well, I will. Got some interviews planned with some pals. Got more stuff. GG Allen, WTF Zombies. Going to be talking about updates on Tim's and my Blu-ray of all of our films and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, thank you. I'm out of here. Blah, 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 blah. And don't forget, when people are really dumb, especially politicians, just look them in the eye. Jugs. All right. Well, this has been The Bizarre Alien, Beyond the Podcast of 1984. Until next time, stay sick, take care. Don't forget to change your underwear and keep the filth. And next episode, who knows what it's going to be, but might be another straightforward one like this. And if you're my friend, thank you for being my friend. And always to my dream woman, please come home. I love you, and I'm waiting for you. Okay, bye.
Beyond the Podcast of 1984.
Beyond the Podcast of
84.
What is this?
It's Beyond the Podcast of 1984.
Well?
It's just BCA.
Better not be. I warn you, for many years, I have been training as an acrobat. Know a lot of tricks.
Well, then show us on btp1984.com.
Of course I wouldn't. Hey! Well.
BCA BCA finds it very hilarious. Maybe you could tune in and listen to the show, btp1984.com.
Sure. What do you think I am? A fake?
Are you a diehard fan of Beyond the Podcast of 1984? Do you want to show off your love for the podcast in style? Well, look no further. Introducing our exclusive podcast merch line. From t-shirts that will make you the envy of all your alien friends, to hats that will keep you looking freaky while repping your favorite podcast. We've got everything you need to take your Beyond the Podcast of 1984 fandom to the next level. So don't wait. Head to btp1984.com now and grab yourself some podcast merch before it's all gone. And remember, wearing BCA's merch will automatically make you funnier and more attractive. Get your Beyond the Podcast of 1984 merch today and join BCA's podcast revolution.